Okay, that's cured for the fins, lower fins. So, yeah, let's read the instructions. So now we need to place the next centering ring. This one right here they call number 4. So that we get the spacing right between the lower fins and the upper fins. So it says, measure exactly 1 3/8 inch up from the top edge of CR3 ring and make a mark on the line on the motor tube. Carefully epoxy center ring number 4 on the motor tube so that the mark you made is even with the top edge of the ring and the edge line of the ring is lined up with the line on the motor tube. So, let's make a mark exactly 1 3/8. Okay, just going to show you how I'm doing this. This is that square. So let's go out to 1 3/8 about there. I'm going to use this stick. So now if I hold that stick there, I've already marked it there. So that is 1 3/8 mark. So let's do this. So now I can hold that here. Make my 1 3/8 inch. Marks. This ring. So line up a little mark there. Pull that up to there. Really, when this goes on, this should be able to. Now these fins should be right there. So, and I can see it right in there. Right. So that's the right spot. And then we have centering ring number 5. This goes on top at the 1/2 inch mark. So lined up that laser mark with the green line. There we go. The main thing there is to make sure that these slots in the rings line up, because that's what we're going to lay and epoxy that recovery harness flat tubular nylon onto. Okay, so we got 2 shot cords. The 12-foot shot cord goes on the top section. The 20-foot shot cord goes on the lower section. And just looking at those, that's the shorter one, that's the longer one. So this is the one that goes on the bottom motor mount booster section. So that's the one we're using. Okay, I've got all this prep. There's the excess shot cord's just stuffed down inside, but there's this length. I've run it through the hole there, down through these slots. I've roughed up the motor mount tube. So really the next thing to do is just to make up some epoxy and glue that down, plus glue in this centering ring and this top centering ring. And then this should be all ready to go inside the tube. Okay, here we go. Fresh batch of epoxy. Let's get these rings where they're supposed to be. Okay, that one looks good. Okay. Alrighty. I think those all look good. Start working on this shot cord. I'm going to be a little more copious on my quantity here. Okay, I think that's that. Now we may, with our extra here, may work on some a little more fillets and stuff around some of these. Yeah, let's see if I can get it everywhere. What a mess. There actually is a thickened version of the G-Flex. And I want to mix up a little bit of that and kind of work in some fillets there just to kind of reinforce this area around the fins. So it's kind of the same deal. This is kind of thicker. Thicker version of the G-Flex. And it's called thickened epoxy. This stuff you want to make sure you just really just work it. You got plenty of time to use it, so not in a big hurry. I'm just trying to just kind of squish it. You don't want to whip a lot of air into it. Trying to just scrape and smear to get it mixed together. Okay, that looks good. So, just pay attention to the part that's already got. Like I said, this stuff is thicker. It's kind of goopy. With a smaller popsicle stick, trying to just work some fillets there. These will stay put. They won't run as much as. And like I said, don't want to add just excess weight. I do want to make sure they're. I think it's got plenty of it on there without going overboard. Okay, kind of gone over it a little bit. Really what I'm looking for are like little clumps that are on the centering rings. Clumps that are on the fins. The epoxy wants to go everywhere. And I think that'll be the body tube going on. Let's look at the instructions and see what it says. So we're down here. Remove any excess epoxy with a paper towel dipped in alcohol. Allow epoxy to cure before moving on. Okay, aye, Cat. Yep, then we're putting on the body tube. Then we'll get into putting on the other fins, etc. So, okay, it's the next day. Next morning, everything's cured. Boy, I sure thought it looked neater whenever I finished it yesterday, but it'll work. Got some runs. It's there inside on the fin. So I guess the next thing to do is see how the body tube fits on it. So let's set the camera here. Like a glove. Okay, I've got the body tube on, dry fit. What I'm doing here is, like, you can see where it's kind of gapped open a little bit. So that means it's kind of needs a little sanding, tweaking here. A little bit of gap, so there's a little bit of warp in this fin. Probably not enough to really make a big difference in flight, but it's tight right there, so I've got a pencil and I've kind of marked it where it needs a little bit of sanding. There it's a little tight. Hold that up. There's a little tight. Maybe right there's a little tight. But this one here, you can see it's pretty tight right there. So what I'm going to do is do a little bit of sanding on that slot. So let's see what we're going to do here. Set that aside. So these marks that I've made with a pencil here. So I'm just going to work those until it fits. Okay, maybe for a little wider shot here. Move the camera back. So I kind of did some sanding, get everything to fit good. So now add epoxy to the top of each of these centering rings and we'll slide that on. So let's just start at the top. Okay, let's just go ahead and do this. Work a little bit here in the end. Paint this around. Looking good there. Looking good here. I may grab some straight pins just to kind of hold that bottom edge in. Make sure I haven't drilled too much there. No, that looks good. Just show you what I'm doing there. It's kind of obscured. I added some pins just to hold that, each of these down tight against that centering ring on the back. So while that's curing, I put together, I actually glued it together. I showed a picture of this earlier on the video on episode 1. Now it's all glued together. I just used some CA and kind of glued it all together. Now I did not put this lid on because apparently this is where you can put the battery, but this kind of, believe me, it does, fits in there. So that's like a little compartment for the battery. I may put the battery on the back side in that compartment. Then the altimeter will mount right there. We'll get the wires coming out to each end. I'll have to figure that part out. This is where my GoPro fits. There's actually 2 slots. One's for the newer versions and one for the older versions. But he's got this little fancy key, so the GoPro fits in there with the lens on this. I would film it, but you can't see it because I'm using the camera. But then you can put that in, use like a little paper clip or something to kind of keep this, this little key mount, and that'll hold the GoPro right there. So that's kind of the idea. If I decide to fly it with the GoPro mounted. Haven't done that yet. with any of my rockets. I haven't done the GoPro. So there's that. Yeah, still have allergies. Okay, getting set up to put the forward fins on. So some highly technical tools here: popsicle sticks and clothespins. So really, just kind of getting this set up so I can be ready. And this one's just sitting in there, so okay. Trying to get a nice bead right on the edge of this thing. And probably what I'll do is carefully slide it in, do the jiggle, jiggle, wiggle, wiggle, and then apply another, just to make sure we've got plenty of epoxy holding these forward fins in. Okay, fresh bead. Carefully. Then just make sure it's in there against the motor mount tube. There you go. So that should keep that very well aligned. The once over for any extra glue globs. So that should hold everything in alignment. Okay, looks good.